Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Be Her Village. Oh, no, it's not the Be Her Village podcast. Welcome back to Socially Distant Tea Time. You skip a week and I lost everything. I'm Caitlin McGrayas, founder of Be Her Village, and I'm joined by Evelyn Page and Laura Otten, maternal mental health specialists. And we are talking about quarantine, and now we're talking about the reopening because we're not really quarantined anymore. So welcome, both of you. And how is it going?
Evelyn?
Well, I was actually thinking about this, and I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but I feel like my kids, and from what I'm hearing from clients, that kids are kind of regressing a little bit, like the main thing being like potty training. So like if kids were potty training, they're starting to have accidents, and my older one has had a couple of accidents, which I didn't really think much of. I mean, she's only 4, so kids have accidents, but I realized once she got potty trained, which was just literally like she just decided I'm done with diapers, like she's had one wet bed at night and doesn't have accidents. So I've just been thinking about kids and kind of how they're starting to they're not going to come and say like I'm anxious or I'm stressed about whatever is going on. Their behavior changes, and so kind of having to start picking up on that too for a lot of parents. So that's kind of what I've noticed, and I don't know if again it's because things are reopening. Like my husband went to the office for the first time since we closed down today, so we were kind of thinking a lot about that, and I'm sure stressed about that last week. And so I'm just kind of, I think she was picking up on us being kind of stressed about that. So that's kind of where we are right now.
And then what do you do with that? Like how do you discuss anxiety with a 4-year-old to put it in their language of, it's okay to be worried, but then just as we want to do for ourselves, it's okay for us to be worried and to have anxiety about this. We all do on some sort of level. But then what reassurance and what comfort can we give without completely washing over the fact that this is very serious? It's that balance to take. And it looks different with a 4-year-old than an 8-year-old than the 16-year-old. I've noticed we've started to do some outside, seeing other kids. And I've noticed my daughter has it's like she's gotten a sip of water when she was really thirsty, and now she wants the whole glass. Whereas before, during this whole thing, she was basically fine. She enjoyed just playing home and with us. And now every day, morning, afternoon, I want to see so-and-so. I want to see so-and-so. And then it goes to the whiny, tantruming. And I'm like, whoa, we did that one thing outside, but now it's like she just wants more and more and more.
So I realized what they were missing. Like when you go and pick a kid up from school or you come home after a babysitter's been there, it's like they were fine when you weren't there, but then they see you. And at least with my kids, I always get the sense that they are overwhelmed with emotions and so happy to see me, and then suddenly so sad that they haven't seen me. And then there's this huge bubble of emotion, and they have no idea what to do with it. So usually they act like little jerks. That's how
my dogs used to do that growing up. They would be so excited to see us, and then they would get grumpy with us.
Yeah, it's like my mom. Anytime my mom would pre-pandemic when she would babysit the kids, it's I would go pick them up and they suddenly wouldn't listen or would be crying and she's like, they were fine. I swear they were fine right before you walked in. And I believe her because I see for me, my kids' transitions are hard. But then transitions with lots of emotion attached to it are even harder. It's they just completely can't cope with it. So watching them go through a pandemic, I struggled with that in the beginning because now I feel a lot more grounded and a lot more centered and a lot better about this whole thing. So I have a grasp on it, but I felt in the very beginning I was really struggling, and it was how do I even begin to address the emotions of children when I have no control over I have control but no feeling of groundedness for myself. So it was definitely a struggle for sure. It's an ongoing theme for me anyway of trying to raise my kids well while still feeling like I'm growing up. Like I'm still learning. I'm learning every day, and I think it's a good thing, but it's also like, it would be nice. I know it won't ever happen, or I hope it won't ever happen. Like, it would be nice to like reach adulthood, like to be just like, ding, I'm done. I've learned all my lessons. I know how to do this. And like, there has not been any point in my parenthood. My oldest is going to be 8 tomorrow. Like, there's no point in my parenthood where I'm like, there's points where I feel super confident, and there's points where I feel like I'm doing a great job, but there's no point where I'm like, I am 100% got this on top of it, and I'm not messing him up. And, like, it's just, there's an ongoing growth process there. And like, it's really interesting. And it's interesting too, because I'm like a mom of 3. And so I think a lot of people look to me like, you're a mom of 3, you know how to do these things. And I'm like, yeah, but also every one of my kids is really different. And also my oldest, I've never been a mom to an 8-year-old before. Mm-hmm. I have no idea what that looks like. I have no idea, like, the types of things we're going to go through and what's right and what's wrong. And so in a lot of ways, I feel like a first-time mom constantly, all the time. So, yeah. It's difficult to parent.
It is. I remember. Yeah, there's always that moment when you like look around, like, I wish an adult would like handle this situation. And you're like, oh, that adult is me. Like, I have to handle this situation.
And more than that, Laura, is like, even more than that, is that as I come into parenting more, and my children are reaching the age that I have memories of, I start to look back and go, oh, my parents had no idea what they were doing. I had such high expectations of my parents. They were my parents. They knew everything. They could make no mistakes. And still, even now, I look at them, they're like 65. And I'm like, you think they know what they're doing? And when you start realizing nobody has any idea what they're doing, there's something very disconcerting about that, and very, very comforting to me. My neighbors and I, we joked we were doing like a bonfire, like with a fire pit with the kids. Mm-hmm. And before we started, I just looked at my kids and I go, hey guys, all the adults that you see here were just kids that our bodies grew. And they were like, and what I meant by it, and I explained, I go, so just, you're in charge of your safety here. Like, if you feel you're too close to the fire, or what you're doing isn't safe, just, the adults here, we don't know either, kiddo. So just back it up, And they were like, okay. But since then, they keep looking at me, and my little daughter is like, are you a kid? Are you a baby? And I'm like, yep.
I feel that way sometimes.
No idea what I'm doing. Yeah, so to have no idea what I'm doing, plus a pandemic, then plus the reopening, it's almost, oddly enough, and I wonder, Evelyn, how you feel about this, like, if the reopening is harder than the actual pandemic, because you seem very comfortable in the, like, I must stay home, that's the rule, and now that there's reopening, it's like, it's almost more difficult to navigate for some people.
Right. No, I definitely feel that, because you still kind of hear kind of like different reports and different places where like infections are increasing and people not using masks. And of course, like over the weekend, I somehow in my email get like flooded with like just different like articles about like, well, like there's, like the WHO is like, arguing amongst themselves about what is this, and like, all these things. So it is like kind of, who do you listen to and who do you believe? And right now it just does feel safer to be at home for us.
Apparently it's the World Health Organization right now. They're really dropping the ball.
We're getting a lot of conflicting information from people who are supposed to giving us direction. And again, and I have seen there's so much conflict when your parents or your in-laws or your friends are on a different page than you are. And we all have so many feelings wrapped up to this, and their politics wrapped up into this as well. And so that's creating a lot more stress. And because people want their babies to have memories with their grandparents, and we've talked a lot about this, of this grief over what we've lost, and the baby showers canceled, weddings canceled, graduations canceled. And now it's summertime and everyone wants to do all of these happy activities. And then we have fall like looming, like, and I know I feel that looming in the distance. And what I am glad to see is I have been seeing more acknowledgement of how it's impossible to expect working parents to have their kids as well. And we should stop talking about how it's impossible and actually set up things so we don't are no longer asking it. I feel like for so long we're like, this is really tough, but do it.
Yeah.
And moms do it. And now I'm seeing more of like, okay, this wasn't feasible then, and it's not going to be feasible for the fall. So that's giving me some reassurance as well, and acknowledgement of that burden mostly being on women. So I'm hopeful that that we won't expect, working parents to also be teaching their children and providing childcare for them in the fall.
What's interesting though is that, I mean, there's so many interesting things about this pandemic, and none of the interesting things are good things. They're all bad. But it's like in New York City, they're giving parents the ability to opt their children out of in-person schooling. And so it creates, again, along racial divides and class divides, this like can and cannot, has and has not. Like, so the families like mine, where I am absolutely ready to opt my children out of in-person learning, not thrilled about it. I would rather them go to a normal pre-pandemic school. But if need be, we have the capacity and the salary and the childcare to keep our children home. There are tons of families that don't have the resources, the money, the childcare, the parents, especially working mothers, that have the flexibility. They have to show up. They're essential workers. They're healthcare workers. They don't have the, they work hourly. They're not salaried. They don't have leave options. And those are the ones that are going to have to send their children in. And then you have this divide, bless you, of people who can and cannot. And so I was surprised at how quickly that happened with New York City. My husband's a teacher there, so that's part of how I know like what's going on with it. But it's like, I thought that we would have like a more uniformed approach to this because of the ingrained inequities in our system, right? Like we know that resources are not equitable the way that they are. So you'd think there would be some sort of thing to address that, but instead they're literally just sending a form home and saying, if you'd like to opt your kids out of in-person schooling, you can, without acknowledging that there's so many people that can't. It's really, really problematic to me seeing how that's going. And yes, and then the concerns about just that it was already hard for working mothers. It was already pre-pandemic. Every working mother that I know is the one that coordinates childcare. So like, I can't work unless I call a babysitter unless I figure this out. Like to the camp, I dropped them off at camp today. Like I
have to go referee something. I'll be right back.
Working mothers. There we go. But it's an interesting dynamic then to like, okay, plus a pandemic, plus optional like remote schooling. I don't know. I know very few families where the man or the male partner is the one that is thinking about leaving the job or thinking about making sacrifices. And
it's unsustainable. I read I want to bring it up here. I want to link to it in my social media too. It came out a few days ago in the Times about mom rage. And I love reading. I love talking about that topic because we don't talk about it. And the article was by a woman who wrote about it, I think last year, about her own experience with rage around parenting and motherhood and towards her children. And she wrote this saying like, in this pandemic, I've heard from more and more mothers writing to me struggling with this. And it makes sense given all the stress happening right now. Yeah. And then that pressure to never be mad at your kids and never feel anger as a woman, but especially as a mother, we're supposed to be calm and patient at all times. So I'll link to that as well because I found it so helpful and a topic we need to discuss more of. Not only is it normal, but there are things to do to help you feel better because it's an awful feeling to have and you don't want to have it. And usually accompanied guilt is the next wave after the anger, the rage. So how to break that cycle.
I don't know, I haven't read the article, but the precursor to rage is often anxiety.
Anxiety, fear, sadness.
Spikes this rage response.
Right.
I absolutely had rage before, and I've had anger, and I've had yelling with my children. What I found is actually the opposite for my family, is that I was surprised at how much calmer I was in the post-pandemic, after I emerged from my depressive month of laying and being, totally immobilized. But there was this, I think my kids were a lot calmer without school. And having my husband home, even though he was working, it had this calming effect, and we all got into a really good group. It took a little while, but I find it's harder when I'm not with my kids all day to know what they've been exposed to. It's like you can kind of keep a better tab on them when you're with them all day to see what kind of mood everybody's in. And I love that kids are allowed to have moods. My 4-year-old wakes up sometimes and she is just pissed, from moment one of the day, and she's pissed all day, and you just kind of know she's having a grumpy day, and she's probably underslept and probably, overtired and whatever's going on for her. But we kind of just allow her that mood. It's harder, I find, when they're in school and when we're working, and you only get them for a few hours at the end of the day to even figure out what they've, experienced throughout the day, and what's triggering them and what's triggering you. And there are definitely some parts of the pandemic and the quarantine that have had positive effects in my family's life. But I'm also, today's their first day of camp, and I'm really
so that's why you're so optimistic. Sometimes you do need a break and just some quiet time when someone's not asking. Snacks and eating, oh my gosh, the food, and it's every hour to hour, between an hour and 2 hours, I'm fixing something. And trying to put control on that, because I know if they oversnack, then they won't eat their dinner. I know all of this. I know what to do. But trying to contain it is very difficult. And I'm shaking my desk. I'm very sick of that. And it was nice to have, I would take them to the gym in the morning, and then that was snack time, get home, lunch, everything. And then she would go to school and had, everything had more of that routine that I didn't have to do so much enforcing. And I feel now I'm enforcing all the time, and they push boundaries all the time because they're supposed to, they're kids, but I don't have a teacher taking over. I don't have the childcare watch people at the gym. I don't have any other person. It's me and my husband enforcing this 24/7. And now that my daughter's staying up later, and sometimes she joins us in bed, I'm you're here all the time. You're just next to me all the time.
It's a lot.
So it wears on you, and you do need a break sometimes. And I've been talking to so many of the people I work with about how to balance, time for your relationship with your partner, time alone, your partner's time alone, plus work, plus childcare, plus all the errands we have to run, plus fun things. We want to do fun things too. So carving this out and making modifications as you go along is a big theme I found with summertime being here.
Yeah. I mean, early on, well, maybe probably about a month in, we kind of figured out, our schedule, and we and I think, Laura, you talk about this too, just having it out where everybody can see it. And so we still, in the morning, my husband and I kind of put down, the times that we have calls or where we're totally booked, we can't do anything else. But I've gotten our 4-year-old to kind of come in and say okay, this is the time where we're going to whatever, bake our bread, or, do some face painting, or do a craft or some project. So she kind of knows the routine. And so I just, if she she'll get into that too, asking for a snack because she's starving. And it's well, is it on the schedule? And she's she can't read, but I'm okay, this is, and she's I'm well, it's not on the schedule yet, and she's oh, okay. And so that's kind of been my teacher that comes in to help. It's just the schedule. So it's not me kind of always having to enforce something. I feel it's a little bit of a helper. And that, it's not perfect. It's not every day runs like clockwork, but it's a little bit helpful too for me to organize the day as well. And that's kind of what we've been doing so far, and that for the most part works.
Yeah. She probably got at daycare. They put up the schedule,
right?
The early grades, and isn't that so comforting for all of us?
Yeah.
But you gotta be flexible with it too. But I like that definitely.
Yeah, it's hard too because like as far as food goes, I mean, we have an obesity, especially a childhood obesity issue in our country, and so I want to instill healthy habits with my kids, and I want them to listen to their bodies. And like we've done baby-led weaning from the beginning. My kids never got purees. We never fed food. Oh my goodness, food fed. They just ate what we ate, but we always try to give them like a healthy variety. We also our philosophy was always, and it kind of is in line with baby-led weaning philosophy. I don't know if you guys have heard of it. Yeah. It's where we don't argue over food. So there's never any like, you have to finish your plate. We ask them to try everything on their plate, but we don't ask them to finish anything. But we also, if they want more, they can have more. So that's like our philosophy at mealtime. But I do notice that the hungrier, Laura, you said it before, the hungrier they are for their meals, the more willing they are to try, and the more that they're like more likely to like the thing they're trying, because when they're hungry, they'll eat anything. But at the same time, I don't want to be this mother that's like denying them a snack. It's like an interesting, I want them to follow their body, and if your body says you're hungry. But Annabelle, my 4-year-old Evelyn, will do the same thing. Like she'll be fine. Like she'll have just eaten. And then if I have something she likes, her eyes get big and she goes, I am very hungry. You're not hungry. You just want chocolate, or you just like want I'm eating,
Yeah, it could be anything. I mean, I could be eating like carrots and she's like, my stomach is just so empty. Sorry, and I'm just like, you just ate like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, like apples, some raisins, some carrots yourself, but all of a sudden it's kind of like, I'm starving, and it's like so dramatic. But the other thing, I don't know if you guys have heard of Parenting with Connection, which is like kind of a model by Karen Purvis. But one of the things that they talk about is like around food is like having a yes bin. Have you heard of this?
I haven't heard of that. No.
So, but it's essentially,
right?
Yeah, like snacks that are like really free reign. So like, they generally are like healthier snacks. And so when I heard about this, I was like, oh, that's a great idea. So there's like, we do keep like a little bin of something in the fridge, like things that need to be refrigerated that they can have that, if they want to go in there and have those snacks, they have that. And then we have like a bin outside that's just kind of non-refrigerated stuff. But at the end of like, once those snacks are gone for the day, they're gone. So it helps kind of teach them kind of how to regulate, if they're all gone by 10 a.m., then your snacks are gone for the day. And in quarantine, we've been a little bit more flexible with that, but that's helpful. And, so we keep like a cheese stick or carrots or fruit and a granola bar or whatever. Because both of them at times can become like ravenous. And I'm like, is this a growth spurt? Is this anxiety? Because kids do overeat too when they are anxious, just like grown-ups will. So yeah, I mean, but again, it's like all these like little things that kind of help right now, and it's not perfect, but it's something.
I find one of the times that I find myself being a first-time mom, but he's going to be 8 tomorrow. Like he's my oldest, and he is my hungriest, and my husband and I find ourselves not arguing, but just like having a real discussion about like whether he can have a banana right now, and like sometimes I'm just like, because I know we emphasize healthy eating and we're not like crazy about it. We try to offer, we know, at parties and when they go out, they always eat like whatever's there, but there's generally healthy food in our house. And I'm like, it's just a banana, like just let them have a banana. Right. But at the same time, if my kids were left to their own devices, they could eat their body weight in fruit. Like they love fruit. And I'm not a fruit eater. And I also am kind of like, fruit's healthy. Like I know it's like more sugary, but I mean, it's not Goldfish and Reese's and Fruit Loops. Like it's a banana. So, I don't know. It's like an interesting thing. And he eats meats and he's not overweight. He's like, if anything, he's leaning out. So I think he's just growing, and it's shocking to me how much he can eat at almost 8 years old. It's It's just incredible, but it's hard to know, like, are they hungry because they're more active, which we found with the pandemic, they were, rather than sitting in school and only having some activity, they were riding bikes, they were running around, so they're a lot hungrier on the days that they're active. And I don't know, it's interesting.
Yeah, when we go to the beach, everyone is, including myself, just more hungry. I mean, I remember eating vast quantities of food growing up. I'm tall. I went through a big growth spurt. And yeah, my kids can eat a ton, and then another day it seems like they survive on 2 or 3 bites. And that's so completely normal. And you're right, like teaching them of like, you know, she'll ask me sometimes and I'm like, I don't know, like ask your stomach, like, are you still hungry, or are you full? Is it empty? And, you know, trying to help her gauge that and never associating good or bad with food, because there is no good food, there is no bad food. But we do talk about how different foods might make you feel differently. So we have those discussions too. But yeah,
growing food.
What's
like
that?
Food, we talk about food that helps you growing food.
I like that.
Yeah, we talk about food being something, we don't use good or bad. But again, this is like another area. This is a great example of me like growing myself, you know, like, oh, there's no good or bad food. Like when we were growing up, we were eating like pasta with hot dogs, Oreos, Elio's, like cereal. I was in the 90s with a single mom. Like we ate nothing but processed food, you know? So like my kids are getting a totally different experience, but I'm still trying to figure out my own relationship with food. I definitely overeat when I'm stressed, and I go for really like comfort foods that aren't good for me. And so it's an interesting dynamic as a parent to try and create this culture of health, and like real health, not just, we don't count calories, I don't talk about my body in front of them, but it's just like an interesting thing to try to have children have a healthy relationship with food when I'm still trying to figure that out for myself. And when the way I was raised, there was none of this consciousness about food, about emotion. I don't know how you guys are raised, but that was not like like my mom was surviving. We were on the streets of Lebanon. Like literally on the streets, like playing basketball and playing manhunt. Like we were on the streets. We were on the street, the one street, Sugar Maple Road. It was like
Sugar Maple Road. That's so sweet.
So it's, I don't know, it's like, it's just an interesting thing to try and like look at these little people and like how I want them to be. There's a like a meme where it's like 2 sweethearts, and it's like, I will not mess up my children. I will not mess up my children. So it's like 2 adult sweethearts, and it's one little one that says a whole new kind of messed up.
Right. Brand new way of being messed up.
Whenever me and my husband are like trying to consciously do this, like they're all going to be messed up from however we're doing it. And there's a little bit of like, okay, we're going to mess them up either way. So let's just try and at least do our best here, but not be perfect about it.
And that's a good example of how we can become healthier and better ourselves as parents, because suddenly you are looking at, we've talked about this with like our, you know, you were very conscious of your like skincare products and like that kind of thing. Like suddenly we're looking at it, wait a second, if I don't want my kid to eat like this, I don't want my daughter and my son to have body image issues, like then I need to look at my own stuff because I'm creating this environment for them. It is a wonderful way to grow ourselves and be challenged ourselves of like, wait a second, I can't talk about my body like that at all, like anywhere near my kids or outside my kids. And so it challenges of, okay, well, how do I really feel about food? How do I really feel about my body? Because now it is more exposed than maybe it was before we had kids.
Mm-hmm.
So our conversation's gone like all over the place.
Yeah. I will say the one funny thing that I'm totally guilty of like feeding into is that my 4-year-old has literally since day one had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich for lunch every single day, has not veered from that. And I mean, it's not the worst thing in the world. And I don't know if it's comforting to her, but she will eat a lot of other things around that, but it's a peanut butter and jelly sandwich every day for lunch. And I'm kind of like curious if there is a world record on, you know, peanut butter and jelly sandwich eating, because I've offered her other things and she'll sometimes think about it and she's like, no, peanut butter and jelly. So I mean, she's a pretty good eater overall. So
to me, that sounds
like care.
No, what
It's-
one meal a day is.
It's easy because I just make them, and then sort of the size, you know, sometimes it's carrots, sometimes it's apples, sometimes they get chips, you know, whatever. So it still feels like pretty, what's the word? Like balanced or, you know, so.
I think we all have something weird like that. So my daughter loved avocados as a baby, like most babies, and you get all like self-righteous and like all uppity about yourself of feeding your child avocado because it's so good for them, or at least I did. And then she stopped and like now won't touch it, and hopefully we'll come back to it. I've tried to like completely act like I don't care, so that way it's not a power struggle. My son, baby, you know, we did a lot of baby led weaning too. Couldn't stand avocado, doesn't even want it on his plate. I offer it to him, I'll put it on his plate, he pushes it off. So then one time I tried to like sneak it, like, and you're not supposed to do that, but I put it like something on top of it and tried, and this is back when he was just a little baby, he spat out the whole thing, like he knew that. So I'm like, all right, I'm turning this into a power struggle, you gotta stop. As much as you love avocado and how good it is for their brain development, so avocados often, but I still eat it. So then I offer it to them. I get resounding no's, and I move on with my day. And you should see me. I'm so thankful that my husband could blackmail me by videoing me with vegetables to feed my kids, because I'll do, you know, broccoli or trees, and I make up songs and I do dances. Like, it's really embarrassing, but it's in the privacy of my own kitchen. But I'm like, I don't care how you eat this, like I'm going to make it fun, and you know, you can touch it, you can play with it, and you're going to eat it. That makes me happy, and I'm going to act like I don't care. Yes. Like if you eat the broccoli, it's like, oh, okay, all right, you ate some broccoli, you want some more? Inside I'm like celebrating, like, you know, I'm so proud of them. But if I act like that, then they'll no longer want to eat the broccoli. So maybe someday. Maybe someday I'll do my broccoli dance for you all.
Oh, I hope so.
I know, I can relate to that so much, because inside I'm just like, yes, they're eating it. And I'm just like, whatever, I don't care.
Yes, poker face. Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you, ladies. This was a wonderful and varied discussion as usual. And it's interesting because I feel like the three of us are a really good like microcosm of what's actually going on out there, because I don't even feel socially distant anymore at all.
I think I'm in the middle. So Caitlin, I think you're like living your life. Yes. I'm like in the middle, and Evelyn, I think you are the most conservative.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Like Evelyn, you're like living how I was living like March 23rd. And I legitimately think that there's a pandemic sometimes. And I don't think I'm being irresponsible. I mean, I'm not going to stores, and if and when I'm in a public place, I'm wearing a mask. I mean, I'm doing the right things, but it's just, I don't know, we've created this little bubble, and the bubble keeps expanding. Mm-hmm. But the anxiety levels are very, very low for me. And
But I think, yeah, like you said, Laura, I mean, we kind of have this whole spectrum, because I think that's where people are just kind of all along it, just depending on your circumstances.
Oh yeah, I'm sure people listening to this, if you're out there, either be like, oh, I'm a Caitlin, or I'm a Laura, or I'm an Evelyn. Like, mm-hmm. I'm definitely in between. Like, we are doing more, but we are still a little closed in, and yeah, but I think that's nice, and it's nice to be able to talk about it without judgment of how you two are doing it or how I'm doing it, because there is no wrong. Well, there's the wrong going into the store.
Like, there's no right or wrong, but you know what? There is a wrong.
Correction. There is a wrong.
But none of us are doing it the wrong.
None of us are doing it. But out of the three of us, there's no one here who's doing it right or wrong, and we can all be accepting of that and be friends and loving and non-judgmental about it. So I'm very curious to see what the three of us do come fall with childcare, because we all work.
Summertime Caitlin, I think, is very different from October Caitlin. I think I might be an Evelyn in October.
Yeah.
Yes, very interesting.
I may be continuing to do the same thing I do now.
I should make up a quiz, like, you know, the BuzzFeed quizzes of like, who are you?
Are you Caitlin, Evelyn, or Laura? I'm gonna look into doing that, because that sounds a lot of fun. All right, awesome. Yeah. Thank you, ladies so much, and I hope you have a great week. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, you too.
Bye.